Hi, my name is Dr. David Campt. I'm with the Dialogue Company. I'd like to welcome you back for our third installment of our weekly series, our 7-part weekly series focusing on mobilizing people around this election. We are talking about encouraging and empowering non-voters, and I am joined by my comrade. Introduce yourself, comrade.
Hi, everybody. I'm Karin Tamerius. I'm the founder of Smart Politics and an expert in political psychology and psychiatry. I teach folks how to talk about politics without arguing.
Right. She does a great job at that. And I'm with the Dialogue Company, and we focus on giving people the tools and skills so they can create moments of dialogue, maybe moments of extraordinary dialogue, especially from moments of disconnection, which is so much of that disconnection is happening around the election. So we're talking today about encouraging and empowering non-voters. Just to give you the context, this is our third of these Monday sessions in a series of 7. We've been focusing on the first 3. This is the last one focused on encouraging non-voters. And then for the next 4 weeks, we're going to be talking about the importance of talking well across the divide, because there's such a divide in our country, and we want to talk about ways of bridging that divide. So today we're going to, so that's us. So today we're going to focus on telling a harmonized story that I will explain how that fits into our overall method we've been teaching. We're going to talk about encouraging with core concerns, encouraging people to vote by focusing on their core concerns. Harmonizing with those concerns as somebody who wants to promote voting. How do you harmonize with somebody's concerns? And empowering with support, and then we'll take any questions that y'all might have. So that's our agenda. So the core topic is, how do you harmonize to overcome common voting barriers? A lot of people have various barriers to voting, various things that they say are the reasons why they don't. And so this is about the last step in this process called Harmonize. Let me explain the whole process that we promote. So the REACH method is a way of managing a conversation that uses principles of neuroscience we talked about in previous episodes. You can go back and look at those to try to maximize your chance of influence. So you first need to reflect. You need to calm down and get ready for the encounter. It's a different way of managing conversation, and it's important to be centered and to get your compassion up. So to calm your energy down, so you can be focused, and also get your compassion going so you're not in a stance of superiority, and because that doesn't help you. Inquire, British spelling, has to do with asking questions and finding out where the other person is coming from. That's an important thing to do if you're trying to influence somebody. Agree. What you want to do is to convey the sense that they're not particularly crazy. Even if you're a hardcore voter and they're a shaky voter, you want to agree with something that they said in why they don't want to vote. They need to feel accepted. They need to feel like you have some level of alignment with them, and you're not looking at them as a complete foreign thinking being. And then there's a confess step where you tell a story that goes further on the agreement. Agreement is telling somebody that you have some alignment. Confessing is showing them by telling a story. And then harmonize. That is where you try to move them. And we will talk about the different elements of that process. But harmonize is where you try to help them see that the perspective they said when they said they didn't want to vote, it doesn't have to be completely obliterated. They're still a reasonable person, but there is another way to think about the choice, and you're trying to harmonize that other way, which leads them to voting. That's the point. You're going to do that through a story. Now, the story is going to, that we suggest, is going to focus on how you change, right? You're going to, basically, it's how I went from a less empowered state, and it might not have been about voting, but it might have been, to a more empowered state. You're showing that change is possible, and you're modeling that for them. And basically, you're inviting them to a new way of thinking about the problem and inspiring them to action. Those are the core objectives of a story. Let's go into a little bit more of the substance of it. So what are the elements of that? So you can see, some of this is just elements of any story, right? You want to get clear on who is the central character. That would be you. The message you want to have them take away is that you can or should take action. So stories typically have a few different things. There's a central character. There's a challenge they have to overcome. And so the challenge is overcoming barriers to voting to make a difference. There's a choice that has to be made. The central character has to make a choice in the face of those challenges. What's the decision that they had? What's the decision they had? And in this case, the decision that you made to act. And then you want the outcome, the positive outcome that happened as a result of your decision. So that's, broadly speaking, the construct of your harmonized story. So, anything you want to add to that, Karin, before we move on?
No, sounds great.
All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a role play. Again, in each of the past couple of weeks, we've done role plays, and we focused on some of the earlier steps of the process. So here, we're going to focus on some of the latter steps, the agree, confess, harmonize story. So I'm going to be the non-voter. Karen's going to be the voter. And so we're going to assume that outside of the realm of this role play, Karin has calmed down so she can engage this. She's asked me, she's inquired about what I care about. And I'm going to convey, starting now, I'm going to convey how I feel about voting. And that's what she's going to focus on the last 3 steps of that process. Okay. Hey, Karin, how you doing?
I'm good. David, it's good to see you.
It's nice to see you. So we were talking last week, and then I had to get off the phone. We were talking about voting. And I was just telling you that the reason that I'm not planning on voting is because I just don't feel informed enough. I've been dealing with a lot of issues. I got to take care of my dad. I got my kids I got to take care of. It's a kind of a busy time. And so I just don't feel like I'm informed enough to really make a good, to participate in a rational way. So that's why I'm not planning on voting at this point.
Oh, I totally get that, David. I live in the state of California, and we have this proposition process, and I am not informed at all about. I couldn't even I couldn't tell you how many propositions are.
I always have a lot of propositions,
much less how to vote on them. So I totally get that. Yeah. But what I can tell you is from my experiences over the past few years, early in my life, I used to kind of avoid propositions. I would still vote, but I would only vote on the things I felt really knowledgeable about, and I would skip the other.
Yeah, you understand what I'm talking about, right? It feels weird to vote. You don't know what you're just checking off a box. Like, what are you doing, right?
Yeah, and because I was afraid of making a mistake, and over time, the consequences of that haven't been really great. Like, there have been a lot of measures that have passed in California over time that I regret, and I wish I had voted against them, but I didn't, because I didn't feel competent to do it. And I kind of learned from that, I think. So in recent years, what I've done is I'm still really busy, like you, right? I mean, none of us has. We all have full-time jobs. We all have things we need. I have kids. I got household to run, all of these sorts of things. But what I've learned to do is, I try to find a little bit of time that I set aside to read up on the measures. But even more, I reach out to people who I trust, people who are experts. And I can't be an expert on everything. But I know a lot of people who are really smart and pay closer attention to California politics than I do. And that's kind of how I've navigated it. It makes me feel
so instead of trying to feel like you need to go do a lot of research on the internet. Who knows that take that rabbit hole. Lord
Right.
knows we got. You're saying talk to some. What you did. What you've done is talk to people that you already know and can summarize things for you. Is that what you're saying? That you trust? Is that the
Exactly. Like, there are a lot of smart people in the world, and they can help us make decisions so we're not totally out there on our own. And that, so I like that.
Huh. Okay. I got you. Okay. Is that the close of our scene?
Scene.
All right. Okay. So so anyway, what people should notice is that she didn't fight me on she didn't tell me, oh, you have enough information. She didn't fight me on it. She went with it. She identified with it. She made me feel like she got me and accepted me and told me she's been where I am. And I think that's a critical thing that people trying to persuade other people do not do enough of, right? Because and not being in a stance of acceptance produces a reaction in the other person. It makes it harder for them to take you to take your advice later seriously. So yeah. So thank you for doing that. Okay, now let's move forward. So one of the things we want to focus on is the issue of highlighting core concerns, because part of what I talked about there was I don't feel enough. I don't feel like I had enough information. But another thing, so you want to address that core issue, but in the Harmonized step, excuse me, also encourage you to, after addressing the issue, is to link back to what worries the person. So one of the ways that you should have done that is that in the inquire step, you ask them about that. You ask what worries you the most. So here's a suggestion that, Karin, you might want to amplify this. That you can ask what issues do you care about, but often people hold it in a different way. Where asking about what worries them the most is a more effective way of getting at their heart level concerns. Do you have any more to say about that, Karin?
Yeah. People kind of have a box in their head for the word issues. And if they think, when you ask them about issues, what they're going to go to are wedge issues, the things that they tend to be very concrete on and very fixed on. So a lot of times they'll say things like, oh, I'm an abortion voter, or I'm a gun voter, or my top issue, I don't know, might be climate change. So when you ask for those issues, you might evoke something that's actually not their priority in the moment. Rather, it's something they've psychologically tagged as an issue of import. And so it's important to really get at what's on their mind right now, not what they have identified cognitively as important.
Okay. So we'll do another role play. And just for the sake of time, since we're trying to make sure we finish this and have enough time for any questions that come up, we're going to go again. We're going to start out, we're going to end with me answering the inquire step, but what is off this screen, off of this role play, is that I have told Karin that the issues that I am most worried about.
Well, can I actually ask you that, David?
So you want to do that one? Okay, let's do it that way. So we're gonna go with the inquire step. Okay.
Let's start from the inquire step so people can hear it all the way through.
You're right, Karin. I think that's a better way of doing it.
Okay.
So all right.
All right, here we go. Hi, David. How you doing?
Pretty good. How are you?
I'm pretty good. I've been, I'm thinking about the election a lot these days. And, and I asked you a little while. Do you remember when I asked you a little while ago, I asked you those two questions about whether you were planning to vote and who you were planning to vote for?
Right.
Do you remember what you told me?
Yeah, I said that I'm only about 40% likely to vote, and that if I did vote, I probably was gonna be, I was a little bit leaning toward Biden, but maybe 55%. But
Right.
but what seemed to affect you the most was me saying that I was only 40% likely to vote.
Right.
So, but yeah, so I remember that.
Since then, I've been thinking about that, and I was kind of wondering if you would say a little bit more about what's kind of driving you on that. Like, what have your experiences been with voting? Is there something that kind of is getting in your way, or?
Right. Well, I mean, my experience is that I think I just I feel like I don't really care about voting just because, like, what really happens? Like it doesn't, the whole process is so removed. It seems like no matter what happens, no matter how people vote, the politicians don't do anything else. And it just seems like, why should I even care about that? Why should I put energy into that? Like, it just seems like things I care about, but there's of course I care about what happens in society because what happens to me. But in terms of voting, I just don't really. When people say you should vote, all these people walking around with the I vote. I'm like, I don't care about that. So it's a kind of an apathy situation.
I see. I got it. And it sounds like you're making a distinction between caring about the world and what happens in the world and kind of caring about voting, because
I'm really worried about healthcare. I'm really worried about healthcare as a general proposition, and I'm also really worried about the coronavirus, like which is related to healthcare, right? So I'm very concerned about those things, but I'm not seeing the connection between that and voting. So I kind of don't, so I mean, coronavirus is new, healthcare concern is old, but it seems like, what's voting going to do? Like, I just don't care about that.
Yeah. Okay. And have you ever voted?
Yeah. Back when I lived in DC, I voted. There was a candidate I really liked, and they were running for the Democratic primary, and it's a super Democratic city, and they lost in a close election. And then like there was this other candidate for the Republicans they went to the finals, and like it was obvious they should have had it was obvious that the voting should have been differently between the two people who were the most followed, because a very small number of Republicans. So that just made me not care about the whole thing, because it seemed like no matter what you do, like somehow the system is rigged so it doesn't reflect people's will. So I'm like, why should I even care? Why should I even get all excited about this? So that played a big factor in my not caring now. Like, what difference does it make?
I can totally get that. I think I even now sometimes I wonder, is my vote going to matter? How much is it going to matter? All of these people are voting who, what's one in millions of votes, and there are so many members of, why should they care about me?
Right.
Who am I?
Exactly.
I think that one thing that I remember is, to give you an example of me being where you are, is just back. Wow, this would have been after, I think after Obama was elected, and they were debating the Affordable Care Act and trying to get that through. And I've got to admit that I wasn't super invested in that fight, and I didn't spend a lot of it didn't come up for a vote really, but it wasn't like I wasn't talking to people, I wasn't advocating for it. It just kind of was something that was happening out there in the world that didn't
kind of removed.
Like it really affected me at any big level. And then the Affordable Care Act passed, and great. And it kind of looked like, hey, what I do doesn't really matter. Good things happen anyway.
Well, it's good to have in that case. They don't always happen.
to some extent.
Mm-hmm.
More recently, though, my thinking on this, I think, has kind of changed. And a big thing that happened for me is that after the Affordable Care Act passed, I got cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And so it now, like, when I got cancer, I had to stop working. And when I stopped working, I lost my health insurance. And so the only way I was able to get health insurance was to kind of shift the whole system to Affordable Care Act. And that is how I get my healthcare now. And so
it really made a difference.
Yeah. And when I'm listening to you talk about COVID and your concerns about safety around COVID, I kind of wonder about that. Oh no, maybe you have healthcare now, but what if you end up in a similar place like me, get sick, or someone you love gets sick, and then the Affordable Care Act isn't there anymore because
court cases.
What Trump wants to do, get rid of the Affordable Care Act, and then you lose your health insurance the way I lost my health insurance. I mean, if I could go back, I think in time, I might approach things differently and realize that sometimes when I'm thinking things don't matter, they really matter a lot more than I realize. So anyway, I thought it.
You think that the voting makes a difference on that, though?
Yeah, I do, because the survival of the Affordable Care Act really hinges on who wins this election. I
got you. There's a big difference. They are different on that.
Yeah.
I got you. Okay. I'll think about that.
All right. Excellent.
Okay.
Time.
All right. So we have about 9 minutes left. Ooh, maybe 7. So what I want to do is to outline some critical steps in the Harmonize phase, then we'll do a final role play. So I'm going to just run through this briefly. So,
and this is especially for when you're talking to non-voters.
To non-voters, right?
Right. This is special.
One of the things that's important to do, if you've told your story about that basically shows that there's a different way of thinking about it. What you want to do is to make sure you ask for a personal commitment. 60% of non-voters have never been asked to vote by an institution, by their mama, by their friends, by anybody. So ask them to do that. So that's one factor. You might ask them to do it as a favor to you. You might ask them to do it on behalf of people who can't vote, but ask them to do it. Second, make a plan. One of the things is it is well established that and you'll see this in some of the rhetoric and advertisements about voting. People who have a plan, who've thought about how am I going to actually go vote, are much more likely to vote than people who don't have a plan. So help them make a plan. Next, help them implement a plan. Our theory in this whole process here is that it's sort of friends and family canvassing or personal network canvassing. And so the idea is that a couple of people that you're working on, that you care about, you've engaged them because you care about them. So help them implement their plan. Next is follow up with them. If you say you're going to follow up, do it, because if people not only follow up, but tell them you're going to follow up and do it, because it is well known that if you tell people you're going to follow, you're going to check with them after the election, see if they voted, or you're going to call them next week to see how they're doing on the registration or whatever that is, that the threat of your saying you'll do that actually tends to motivate people. And then finally, thank them for everything that they do. Okay. So we have about 5 minutes left. So
take up from where we left off in the last role play.
Sure, let's do that.
Okay.
So I hear you Karen, I guess maybe it does. I certainly care about healthcare and I was remember when you were talking about. I remember John McCain's one vote made a difference in keeping the ACA going so far. So who knows what? Obviously, obviously things can make a who's in office make a difference. Okay, so I'm open. I'm open to what you're talking. I guess. I mean, it's a way of thinking about it. I've been thinking I don't care, but maybe I should think about it differently.
Yeah, you're paying closer attention than I would have guessed, David. You're following it. So let me ask you this: if I ask you as a personal favor to me to vote this time around, do you think you would be willing to do that?
I thought paying me to vote is illegal. But all right, you ain't gotta pay me. You ain't gotta pay me. You ain't even gotta buy me lunch. Okay. Yeah, I think it actually is illegal. But okay, sure. Okay, I get that. That's interesting. That feels weird, but sure. A whole bunch of things feel weird. So I'd be willing to do that.
Okay.
For you, Karen, I'd vote.
I'm sorry?
For you, I'd vote, and even if you weren't on the ballot, I'd vote for you because you asked me to.
Thank you. So, let's make that real for a moment.
Okay.
Which is, what is it going to take for you to vote? Are you registered?
Yeah, I'm registered.
How do you know you're registered?
Well, I thought I was registered. Maybe I'm not registered.
All right. So the first thing we're going to do is check your registration to make sure it's up to date and it's at your current address. That's really easy to do, and I can help you.
It's easy to do that. Okay.
Are you the kind of person who would rather vote from by mail, or do you really want to?
I think I'd rather vote by mail this year.
All right. Yeah, with COVID and everything, I totally understand that.
All right,
you're going to make sure that you get a mail-in ballot.
I'll vote for you. I ain't gonna risk my life for you.
And okay, so my next question is, how are we going to make sure that you seem pretty informed, but how are we going to make sure you know everything you need to know?
You better follow up.
All the measures and the judges and all that other stuff.
Well, how am I going to make sure? I think the critical thing for me is just to get some help in actually going through a register. I have a lot of stuff to do, and so the critical thing is if we're going to make this really happen, then you might need to check on me.
Okay.
To make sure I do that.
I will do that. I will follow up and make sure that you actually cast that vote, because you promised me. Right?
I did.
So that means a lot to me. All right. So we're going to follow up, and after we finish talking, I'm going to go check out your registration and all that, and come back and let you know exactly what needs to happen.
You can take it. Okay.
You're in North Carolina, right?
Yeah. You can check it out for me. Okay, that's interesting. Sure. Let me know. Maybe I'll have to register.
It's all public record stuff, so I can totally help you with that.
Okay.
Well, excellent. David, I am super happy that you were willing to talk with me about this and think about it, because not everybody is willing to do that. And I'm especially honored that you are willing to vote for me.
And again, if you run for office, I'll vote for you in a whole different way. So that's fine.
Excellent. All right. Talk to you later.
All right. Scene. All right. So it's actually 1:00. So I want to ask. We'll take another minute or so. Are there any questions in the back? The goddess controlling everything is Elena. Elena, are there any questions that we should address?
No questions. We do have a comment from Mike. It says, "Vote blue for our future."
All right. Well, I got you. Well, the officially the Voice Project is just promoting voting and good dialogue across the divide of voting, non-voting, and between different views. But I hear you, bruh. But I would say that we all need to be in favor of people voting, period. Because 100 million people not voting 60% of Americans voting is not enough. I think we're 26 out of 32 countries, and 32 developed countries. But we all need to be getting people to vote, and to vote like we want them to do. And so part of what we're going to be dealing with next week and for the next 4 weeks, is how you influence people across the divide of how to think about voting. So this was whether to vote or not. But if you want to, here's the good news. The same mechanism that you would use to have a good conversation across the conservative liberal divide is the same mechanism you would use to try to get them to vote your way. It's because you want to engage people in dialogue. So what we're going to be talking about is what are those methods to have a good conversation, whether you're trying to have a persuasive one or just an exchange. That's what we'll be talking about for the next 4 weeks, starting next Monday. So,
and I'll just highlight here, we're not just talking with people who are like totally on the other side of the divide. We're also talking about people who are undecided. So those voters who are still up in the air, how can you be persuasive in those conversations?
Yep. So if you enjoyed this, we would invite you to tell your friends about it, because there's a watch party tonight at 8 p.m. So this will be rebroadcast, and we can, one or both of us will be around checking out the chat in case questions come up. So tell your homies and homettes about it. And because we're trying to spread the word that Americans need to talk about voting. It's so important. We need to not have these things be something that's too shaky to talk about. It's too tense. No, we can talk about it. We can bring skills of compassion-based engagement and have these conversations be connecting, not disconnecting. So thank you all so much. And thank you, Karin. Thank you, Elena. And
Elena.
Bye for now.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks for joining our broadcast.